I messed up the this is the first episode on the brand new M1 iMac. It's awesome, but I somehow messed up the audio, so the audio is a little it's it's not as good as it normally is. I don't know why, and I don't think it's something I can fix. I think it's something I forgot to record, but so please bear the growing pains. Thank you for your patience, but this is the first episode that I think is officially in 4K, so that's kind of cool, I guess. Sure. We'll take it. We'll take it. Okay, not just the audio, but also part of the video is messed up to where the cropping is sometimes you see Mr. Vecchione, sometimes you see me, sometimes you see me, two of me. It's growing pains with the new computer. Please bear with me. Audio's messed up, video's a little messed up, but the episode's great, content's still the same, and that's all you need. Am I right? I'm right. Excuse me, Mike. We're
That's
recording
okay.
with Mr. Michael Vecchione and excuse me. And for everybody listening, this is now the third time it has happened. We have been temporarily suspended from YouTube, and it's I don't know what else to do. I had on the inventor of the mRNA vaccine, and they didn't take that one down, but they took down an episode with, I guess, a less famous doctor. I don't know. To me, at this point, I'm just kind of getting a kick out of it more than anything. I'm just getting a kick out of it. But so this will be on YouTube in a week, but it will be on Rumble and BitChute and Spotify today. Mr. Michael Vecchione, author of Crooked Brooklyn, Friends of the Family, Hand of the Killer, and Murder on the Bridge, if I got them all correctly just now.
And
And
behind the murder curtain.
behind them, damn it. I was so close.
That's okay.
Can you introduce yourself for all the new listeners?
Sure. My name is Michael Vecchione, as Tom said, and I am the retired former chief of the Rackets Division in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, and now author. In fact, I have a new book that will be coming out next year called Homicide is My Business. It's about a Sicilian hitman who comes to the United States trying to make his bones, so to speak, and runs into lots of problems. So very interesting story. And when it comes out, I'm hoping Tom will have me back and we'll talk about that book when.
Of course. I'm insulted that you feel the need to ask. I'm truly insulted. It's a smack in the face.
Well, must be a new computer, must not be working right. So that's,
it's
not hearing properly. Oh,
yeah. For everybody,
I lost you for a second there.
Are we back?
What happened here?
I don't know. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, but I lost the video.
That might be on your end. I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't know how I do this now. Sick of the 40-minute time limit? I don't know what that means, but
what? No, it's
hang on a second. Let's see if this does it. There we go.
We good?
Yeah, we're back.
All right, beautiful.
I'm going to keep my hands off my mouse here and just answer your questions.
All right. Well, so we've talked about everything under the sun, and today I wanted to ask more about interrogations and exactly. I'm obviously not in this field, so I'm not even sure what the correct questions are to ask.
Okay.
So if you were hypothetically on a podcast with someone that didn't know what to ask, what to you are the most interesting aspects of it? What are, I mean, is there a basic, is it an art? Is it not something where you just learn A through, you can learn, I can learn the rules of football, but it's not until I'm on the field with Tom Brady and getting the shit kicked out of me by 600-pound linebackers under the lights, and I understand the disappointment of a loss.
Right. That's precisely the case. First of all, it is an art. And I've been, just so that your listeners and viewers know, I was in the district attorney's office for 30 years of my 40-year plus career as an attorney. And during that time, one of the duties of initially a young assistant district attorney, and then I did it even as I got older and more experienced and into much higher quality cases or more difficult cases. We did something called riding. And what riding is, it was the term of art that we used in the office. Essentially, it was an assistant district attorney, mostly in the beginning from the Homicide Bureau, But later on, when I took over rackets, we did it in the rackets division as well. The assistant district attorney is on call for a 24-hour period, and he or she is available to detectives, police officers, agents, any law enforcement who is making an arrest or doing an investigation in what was in Brooklyn, which is called Kings County. And oftentimes, if you were on homicide duty, you would get a call for a couple of reasons. One, the defendant who had been arrested for the murder had been interrogated by the police officer or detective and was willing to give a statement to the district attorney. So the cop would take the statement, he would write it down in his own hand, but there's nothing like seeing a video of the defendant making the confession on video so that you could play it to a jury later on and not necessarily depend on the cop retelling what the confession was. So the assistant DA was on call to go out to the various police or law enforcement locations to take a videotaped confession or statement. It didn't necessarily have to be a confession. Maybe the defendant wanted to offer some sort of an alibi, but that statement would be videotaped, and it would be up to the assistant district attorney to take the statement, whatever it was. And of course, you would go out and first advise the defendant of his Miranda rights, and then listen to what the defendant had to say. And it was incumbent on the assistant district attorney to make sure that he or she does this interrogation with the idea that later on this was going to be played at a trial of this defendant, assuming he didn't plead guilty, he or she didn't plead guilty. And it would have to be the kind of evidence that a jury would look at and use from a prosecutor's point of view, for the basis of a conviction. So it's very important that the statement that you take from this defendant is done in proper fashion. And you don't learn that right away. I mean, I had to go out when I was an intern also in the DA's office for a while. And I would go out with the assistant DAs who were writing, even as an intern, a law student, and listen and watch and learn. And when you do it enough, you get the feeling and you get the ability to handle these things and keep them to, not necessarily, you don't want to keep them to a minimum, but you also don't want this to be a 3 or 4 hour diatribe by the defendant, which would be a turnoff to the jury. So you have to learn how to focus the defendant on what it is that he has to say. So I did writing when I was a young assistant DA for first 7 years of my time in the DA's office. And that meant that particularly when I was in the Homicide Bureau, depending upon how many assistants we had at that particular time, let's say there were 7 or 8 assistants, that means every 7th or 8th day, you would be on call and you would be available to the police for that 24-hour period. And Tom, I can't tell you how many nights, mornings, afternoons I spent in police precincts talking to defendants and also witnesses, because the police would pick up a witness and bring him into the station house and take a statement. And that witness then would be, that person's statement would be essentially etched in stone on videotape and would be used later on in the event the witness had a change of heart. You use it to kind of refresh their memory. And it was a valuable piece of law enforcement technique to master. And I have to say that it wasn't easy in the beginning. You know, I was nervous, and let me just set up what would happen. So if it was a defendant, the detective who had the case would pick up the defendant and bring him or her into the station house. They would then sit in a room and talk to the defendant in the hopes of getting a statement of some kind. a confession is the best, but also if the person had some sort of an alibi or some other defense that he or she wanted to put forward, it gives the detective an opportunity to listen to it and then go out and see if it's actually valid. So the statements were very important. So the detective would come in, would bring the person in, they'd sit down in a room, he'd be advised, or she would be advised of Miranda warnings, and then they would ask questions. So tell us where you were on this particular night, and the detective would then go through the entire event or the entire statement that this defendant wanted to make, asking pertinent questions. Now, the detectives were interested in essentially one thing: getting enough evidence from this statement, if it's a defendant, to be able to use it as the basis for an arrest to clear a case. The prosecutors were looking for not only that, but to make sure that the statement was good enough to play in front of a jury at a trial if the defendant, as I said before, didn't plead guilty to the crime. So essentially, what you have to do, and what's very important as a prosecutor, is to ask questions that are, I'll use the term open-ended, but I don't really mean it that open-ended. You can't lead a witness. You can't say,
Mhm.
so tell me at this particular time, you picked up an axe and what did you do with the axe? You can't ask those kind of questions, because that would be the defense attorney's, the defense attorney would use that and say, it wasn't my client who was confessing. He was intimidated and just responding to the DA based on those kinds of questions, and giving the DA what he was looking for. So you have to be able to ask questions that are open-ended enough so that later on, when you argue to a jury, you can say to them, look, I didn't lead this defendant to tell me that he shot this individual. I simply asked him a question: what happened on the corner that night? And he then told us that he got into an argument and took out a gun and shot this particular individual because they were fighting over money or over a woman or over, I had cases where people were fighting over a bottle of beer, so it was that it was really bad when I first started in the DA's office. So that is what you learn. You learn how to frame the questions so that you get a voluntary statement out of the individual, as opposed to a statement in which the defendant is just simply answering yes or no. So for instance, you don't really ask a question like, so did you take out a gun and shoot this guy on the corner last night? Yes. Did you take that gun and throw it into the East River after you got done? Yes. Those questions are no good, because essentially I'm feeding him all the information, and all he's doing is answering yes or no or whatever the short answer is. That does me no good at a trial. If you ask the question, as I said before, so tell me about what happened on the corner last night at 10 o'clock. And now he goes into this whole story. Well, the defendant can't say that, the prosecutor or the questioner led him into the answer. So it's very, very important to frame questions that way. And I got to tell you, I have been in situations where I have done cases in which there were videotape confessions, some taken by me and some taken by others of my colleagues, and the witness, although on the tape, confesses and gives a great statement in terms of, for a prosecutor, they'll say at trial, they'll get on the stand and say, well, he intimidated me. You didn't see it, but he intimidated me. The cops worked me over before he got to the room. And then I had nothing to do except just answer yes or no to what, just agree with what he said, because he was feeding me the answer, or the cops fed me the answer. I've had that happen. So you have to be very careful that you close off every avenue, or as much as possible anyway, of this defendant sneaking out of this confession or statement that he's given to the police. Now, one of the things that you also have to keep in mind is that a favorite of a defendant, after he's confessed and he goes back to jail, favorite defense later on, goes back to jail, and all of these people in jail start to talk to him, and he tells them that he confessed, and they say essentially, "What are you, crazy? What did you do that for?" Well, this is, some of them are very, very experienced at this stuff, and they'll say, "Well, here's what you need to say. If you go to trial, you got to say that the cops, beat you up before the prosecutor showed up, or the cops fed you all the information about the case, and you were told that if you didn't agree, that you were going to get your ass kicked in the cell by the cops after it was over," that kind of stuff, right? So that's happened. And it happened in, one of the cases we talked about. It happened in the case involving the murder on the bridge with the young girl who was killed by Raymond Vargas. Vargas, if you remember, was picked up by the cops, but was being looked at and looked for, in terms of an arrest by the cops for another entirely different crime. They were looking for him because he killed his best friend after he stole his wallet and credit cards, etc. And only when Vargas's girlfriend got into the police car to go with them to the location where she was supposed to meet him and set him up for the cops, did she mention that he had killed this young girl on the Williamsburg Bridge. The cops were as shocked as anyone. And so when they arrested him and they brought him back to the precinct, I believe that he was so overwhelmed with guilt that he voluntarily just spewed everything that he had in him regarding this little girl who he had killed on the bridge. He had information that only someone who had been there and done this would have had. It's not the kind of thing that he could have picked up the newspaper from years before and learned what had happened, because the cops weren't releasing detailed information. And he had it. He had it all. And it was all on videotape. All of it.
Good. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go right ahead.
Is there any, what is like the truth behind, or I don't even know what the truth is. It's the idea that, confessing, right? You could say like kind of like wet behind the ears, like, guys like me that have never really been in trouble, or let's say I'm like 15. It's always like, someone like me, like my conscience is always like, yeah, just tell the truth. Just tell. Like I've been pulled over. Maybe it's just because I'm a, white privilege. Maybe it's because I'm a white male. I've been pulled over like 10 times in my life. Okay. I've gotten one ticket, and it's because every time when the cop says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I said, "It's because I was speeding." I'm not. Well, I guess I was speeding. Why are you speeding? I was just taking a gamble, see if I could get home quicker. I'm just like, they go through this bullshit all day, every day with people. It's the same doctors, lawyers, construction workers, moms. It's everyone just feeding them the same bullshit. Oh, I didn't see that. No, I'm not going to fucking lie to you, man. I'm driving from Atlanta back to Athens. I've driven this 1,000 times. I know what the speed limit is. Just trying to get home a little early. Why? Because I wanted to get home a little early.
Okay.
9 out of 10 times. I'm not even exaggerating.
What's the question?
9 out of 10 times they go, "All right, man. Well, thank you for being honest, Thomas. License, okay, blah, 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 blah." My point is now that's a speeding ticket. There's something more. Someone like me, my experiences say, yeah, just tell the fucking truth. And I could have 10 tickets, but I have one. Whereas other people say is, it doesn't matter if you didn't do anything wrong. Don't give them anything. They're not here to help you. They're here to win a case. They want to put one on, they want to put another notch on their win board. When it comes down to anything illegal, like I saw a video of a guy who got caught selling meth. They're like, "What is that?" He's like, "Meth." "Are you selling it?" He's like, "Yeah." They're like, "Why?" He's like, "Hit it hard times. He just told the truth." And all the comments in the video are like, "You fucking idiot." Like there's no romantic, if you tell the truth, they'll help you out. They're just going to hit you just as hard. So there's no benefit to, as opposed to, Okay.
No, let me just. I
Okay.
think I can answer by
Okay.
finishing what I was about to say about Vargas.
Okay.
So Vargas gives this confession. He does exactly what you are saying.
Oh
He
Jesus.
confesses. He gets it off his chest. In fact, the cops used to always say to me when I was a young, wet behind the ears assistant DA, I would say, why would this guy confess to you?
Yeah.
He or make that statement to you, and the detective will look at me and say, that's why they call it confession. It unburdens this particular guy. He's killed this young little girl on a bridge, and he's been living with it. In fact, if you remember correctly, I told you that he said she used to come to him in his
Every night.
dreams.
Yeah.
So he unburdens himself. He tells the truth, the entire truth. Then he goes back to jail, speaks to his buddies, and they say exactly what you said those other people told you. Are you crazy? What are you doing that for? Then he speaks to his lawyer, and his lawyer says, "Are you out of your mind? What have you done? You've confessed." So now they have to come up with the excuse as to why he did it, and that was because this was a big case. This is the defendant now, big case, and they fed me all the information. They were under a lot of pressure to solve it. I was the fall guy, and they gave me all this information. That's what and why did he have to do that? Because he made the mistake of confessing to the police and then to an assistant district attorney on videotape. So if I were to advise you now in terms of the speeding tickets, why I stopped you? He's answering that question so you can confess to him right there, right there. And now you can never say at any time that, oh, I never said anything like that. I never did anything because now these guys are they're wearing body cameras. So your confession, if you later on were in a position where a judge said to you, I'm taking your driver's license away from you now. If you hadn't confessed, well, maybe, there was a way you could have fought this ticket and won, but you're stuck. So the answer is to anybody when I was a defense attorney is keep your mouth shut. The police are not your friends. They are not in this to help you out. They just aren't. I'll give you an example. I had a family member who was coming home from work, gets into his car, is driving home, and gets stopped by the police. Right? He said, what? Why did you stop me? They said, well, you look like you went through a light maybe, and you look like you were driving erratically. He said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, you know what? You're gonna have to go back to the station house with us and take a breathalyzer test because we think that you're drunk. Now, keep in mind, he passed the on the street, walking in the line, all this other stuff, but they took him back to the precinct. Why? Because they needed to justify this stop. And you know what the cops did to him at the precinct? They told him, refuse to blow. Don't take the breathalyzer test. And he thought, well, these are cops. They're telling me the right thing to do. I'm probably going to walk out of here. Don't take that. Well, you know what happened? He didn't walk out. He had to go to court anyway, and he had his license suspended. Because in New York, if you don't take the breathalyzer test, your license is suspended until you have a hearing at traffic court. So the cops are not your friends, and you make their job easy for them if you were to confess. And cops pull all kinds of tricks. That one thing about, oh, Thomas, you know why I stopped you? Sounds like a nice guy. Well, you know what? This is you thinking, telling the truth. He's going to say, thanks for telling me the truth. I'll let you go. No, that's not going to happen. And just think about it. If you multiply it and the crime is something like a murder, and you think you're in a precinct and you're sitting in a room, and cop A comes in and he says, hey, you want a cup of coffee? You want something to eat? You want, we just want to, get your side of the story. Now this guy is thinking, oh, you know what? Maybe these guys, I can talk my way out of this. That's exactly what kind of thinking the cops want, because what's going to happen next is you're going to spill your guts. And even if a guy doesn't confess to actually doing it, but if he says enough to corroborate what other witnesses have told the police, then that confession is as deadly as if it. I'm sorry, that statement is as deadly as if it was a confession.
Sure,
So
sure, and I get that, and I'm not saying what I'm saying is it doesn't apply to murder. And for me, it's like yeah, no, fuck them. Like that's a murder. Like you're kind of fucked. I'm talking about. So we're saying all this, and I do agree with you. They're not your friends. They're not here to help you. But I also, if 10 people tell you, Mike, that Tommy, that Tommy is a motherfucker. You're gonna do an episode with him. He's gonna upload it and he's gonna edit it so you sound like an asshole. And all these people tell you this, all these other ex podcasters with experience, and you're going, oh shit. But then in the back of your mind, you're going, wait. But I've done 7 episodes with him. It's pretty cool. He text me on Christmas. We're always, what's
right.
up, man? How's the family? Blah blah blah. So what I'm saying is like, but from my experiences, 90%. Actually, the one time I didn't do that is the time I got a ticket. And this isn't in one area. This is in different states over the course of a decade. 9 times I got out of it. So like, I'm
Okay,
going from my direct experience that I'm like, it's
Tom,
worked every time.
you're talking about number one. You're talking about stopping someone for a traffic ticket. Okay,
Well,
a
yeah,
traffic offense,
and that's
as
all, and that's
opposed
what
to
I'm
a
limiting
crime.
it to. That's what I'm limiting it to.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to disagree with you that being polite to the officer at a traffic stop of some kind may not may get you out of the ticket. That's
Sure.
happened to me as well. I understand that. Just being polite, but I would never answer that question. Do you know why I stopped you?
Sure.
The answer should be not really. Why did you stop me? And
All
then
right.
when he says you were speeding, say I wasn't speeding. I was not speeding. That's the way to do it, because now with those body cameras, those are
Sure.
those are small little confessions, Tom.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, but the police and listen, for my entire law enforcement career, I wanted to be on that end, the end of the cop, getting the person who I believed was the perpetrator to tell me what he or she had done.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. And you know, you ask and you do what's necessary to try to get out of them a valid confession, one according to the law. I'm not talking about, hitting a guy over the back of the head and then walking in a room after he's been hit and say, okay, tell me what you did. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about doing it by the book, Miranda warnings, and then questioning, not anything else. And
Sure.
those confessions, those statements, even if they're not confessions, can be the most valuable piece of evidence that you have in a trial. And the guys that I dealt with were bad guys, Tom.
Yeah.
They were bad guys. In a homicide bureau, they were basically all murderers.
Yeah.
In rackets, I had murderers, con artists, all kinds of people who were the defendants. So it it's a tool that law enforcement uses, and it's a very valuable tool. But people are starting to there are so many stories now about bad stories about the cops. There are so many TV
Sure.
shows that show cops, tricking people into doing certain things or saying certain things, that people are getting more savvy.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily opening up the way they used to in the past in terms of confessing. But the one thing that I would, as a defense attorney and as someone who was speaking to a client, my advice is say nothing.
Okay.
Keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything, because almost always nothing good can come of what you're saying.
Sure.
So,
Now, because I'm a stubborn asshole, and I'm going to keep arguing. When you hear about guys, you go to jail and they go, "Oh no, you got to go back. You got to say the cop bumped your head on the squad car. You got to say they beat you up. You got to okay. There has to be some truth to these guys these law enforcement officers and attorneys. There's got to be some, even if it's not like a written thing, there's got to be some truth to just you're so tired of these assholes just stretching the system out, just abusing. Oh, he hit me. It's because I'm Mexican. It's blah blah. He gave me a black eye. He said that there. I would imagine. Maybe I am just wet behind the ears. You got to imagine that there is some appreciation for someone that's. And again, I'm not saying murder or yeah, I know I embezzled 100K. There has to be some appreciation for someone that's just not trying to pull a fast one on you. You know, but I did security. I've done security several summers. 7 summers ago, I was doing it in Ocean City, and I was watching over like in a like an apartment block for all these kids that came down for like their senior week. They're all 18 and 19. I knew they were drinking. I knew they were smoking pot. I didn't give a shit. If they made my night easy, I made theirs easy. So if I would knock on the door and be like, "Hey man, we're not drinking," I'd be like, "Dude, just don't lie to me." Every once in a while, someone would be like, "Sorry, dude, I never had a drink, and I was just, I'm excited. It's my 18th birthday." I appreciate it, dude, and I would just shut the door. I'd be like, "I got it." Granted, that's me. I'm not a police officer. Is there not some appreciation for someone that just doesn't tug your dick and is just like, "No, I was being a dick," or is that all? Again, is that all idyllic? Do I just need to keep my mouth shut?
Look, here's what the way I would answer
As
that.
my attorney, Mister Vecchione.
Here's the way I would answer that. If you get stopped, like you described, and the cop says to you, as you have said, "You know why I stopped you?" If you say to him, "I really don't. Sorry." Now you're being polite, right? And if he tells you that I stopped you because you were speeding, there is no reason in the world for you to say, "Yeah, well, you're right. I did." Because now it's recorded. He's got that camera on. Now he's between he can't do anything except A,
Sure.
give you a summons or arrest you.
Okay.
If you had said nothing and listened to what he had to say and you didn't give him a hard time, or you gave him your license and registration and said, "Sorry, I'm not sure exactly what," and you're polite to him, well, then without the confession, he might go back to his car, look and see you have no record, and come back and say, "All right, be careful, slow down,"
Okay.
and
Okay.
walk away. So you see the difference? The difference
I do.
is the confession puts the cop in a bad situation because he then is open to criticism for letting you go,
Okay.
right? He has
Okay.
the discretion to do that, but he may have a prick of a boss at the station house who said, "Hey, what are you doing? This is what you're out there for," that kind of thing. So you can be polite, and I would say to anybody who's listening to this, do not ever give a cop a hard time. Never, under any circumstance at all. If you are being quote unquote investigated or stopped or whatever, you don't give them a hard time. You only lose with regard to that.
Yeah.
You may very well just be sent on your way. But if you start hassling these guys and you start getting into, if you get physical, forget about it. You're getting arrested.
Yeah.
But the idea is keep your mouth shut. Nothing good comes from the statement. Or
Okay.
I'll temper that by saying 99.9% nothing good comes from it. There may be that 1/10 of 1% that says he'll let you go, but
Okay. It's there. Okay. I get the distinction you're making now because all the times that happened to me, that was between like 2010, so not quite a decade. It was actually probably like 5 years between 2010 and maybe 2015. Is 2016 is when this happened. So over 6 years, it might have been before they all had body cams. So now, if they do have a body cam, and I go, "Yeah, I was speeding," and now he doesn't give me a ticket, well, now it's like, well, shit. All we need is for this to leak. Cop not giving a straight white male a ticket, like, and he has the confession. Why didn't
yeah,
I get it? So now you put me in a hard place. You just told me that I. So, like working at a liquor store, if someone says, "Do you need my ID?" Even if they're 90, when they say that, you now have to say, yes. If they don't say anything, you might maybe not ask them because they look 40 and it's midnight and you're tired and I don't fucking care. Just, yeah, give me the money. But if they
so
say, yeah,
hey, it's
okay,
CYA. You cover your ass, right? That's what.
okay, I got you. I got what you're saying now. Okay.
But
So keep your
I
mouth
don't
shut.
want. But I want you to understand that it is totally legitimate. It's totally within the law for police officers, detectives, prosecutors to question and seek to get a statement and or confession out of a defendant. Just has to be done according to the rules. But it's an enormous piece of and valuable piece of evidence to solving the crime correctly by getting the right person. It's hard to believe. There are times when people confess to things even though they didn't do it, and there's a whole host of psychological reasons for that. But it's a way of guaranteeing, for the most part, that we have the right guy and that the right guy goes to trial. So
Yeah.
it's although I got to tell you, I'll give you an example. I did a case once where a cop was killed. He was off duty and he was sitting on his motorcycle. His girlfriend had gone into a store to buy some sodas or juice or whatever. It was July 4th. It was the night of July 4th, and he was off duty, and they were having a good time. And she went into the store, bought some stuff. And while she was in the store, a guy came up to the cop on a motorcycle, and he was in his own neighborhood. He lived in this area and worked in this area, and said, "I want your bike." And the cop began to, resist, and he shot him in the head, killed him. And the bike fell over. The cop fell over. The bad guy grabbed the handlebars and other parts of the bike and tried to pick it up so he could steal it. And it was too heavy, and he let it go. There were 3 eyewitnesses outside who identified this guy. His fingerprints were on the bike. And when the cops brought him in, he confessed to me. I took the statement on videotape, confessed to me everything, corroborated everything that the 3 witnesses said. Admitted to me that he took the bike and touched it, and his fingerprints were left on there. And I asked him, I said, "What'd you do with the gun?" He said, "Well," and he told me where the gun was. And I sent the detective out who got the gun. And while we were still in the station house, he brought it in, and the bad guy identified the gun. "That's the gun I used. I gave it to this particular place," and the detective found it there. I went to trial. This is as locked a confession as you could possibly get. And I got a hung jury the first time I tried the case. Well, it was a racial thing.
Okay.
And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. It was not even, the cop was an African-American hero for that neighborhood. The defendant was African-American. I couldn't figure out what the problem was. I found out later on because I talked to some of the jurors in the first case. The judge said to me, "When can you be ready to retry the case?" I said, I can try the case tomorrow. That's how good the case was. 2 weeks later, we started the trial, ended it 15 minutes after the judge sent the jury in. I had a verdict that convicted the guy. Now, this is with a confession that was airtight. So I'm telling you this because even though you have a confession, it's a part of what you use at a trial and what detectives use to close a case out. But even with the confession in this particular case, with the 3 eyewitnesses, with his fingerprints, with the fact that he was a neighborhood guy who became a cop and who was patrolling his own neighborhood where he grew up. He was a hero in that neighborhood. I still couldn't get a confession out of the first jury. But of course, later on, all of that became so valuable to me because the jury in the second trial said, "Mr. Vecchione, are you kidding me? What else were we going to do? I mean, we knew he did it. Look at all the evidence you had, lined up against him." So, I guess I'm telling you this just to temper a little bit the idea that statements and confessions will guarantee, because there's no guarantees in the law.
Sure.
There aren't any. You really can't, but you have to do as much as you possibly can to build a strong case. One other thing I got to tell you, in terms of confessions and what's important is, in addition to the words, the atmosphere and the conditions under which a statement or an interrogation is done is very, very important. For obvious reasons, I mentioned some before, you can't have a videotape confession that a guy gives you in a room that is surrounded. The entire room is surrounded by cops, 6'2", 3 cops, hanging around. You can't do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Or you can't have, you can't have other things that might impact later on the validity of the confession. You got to be very, very careful. I did a case once, and it's in the book. It's the Amy Watkins case. And when I didn't take this confession, but I was watching it as it was being done. A colleague of mine took it because I was going to try the case. So I had to put the confession into evidence using another assistant DA. So he took the confession. And it was one of these confessions that matched every single piece of evidence that we had. We had an eyewitness. I'm sorry, one of his friends he confessed to her about killing this young girl, etc. And everything matched. When we went to trial, I played the videotape at the trial, and in the background, you could hear a child crying and screaming. I thought absolutely nothing of it. Didn't make a difference to me because I was there. I knew there was no kid in the room. So to me, it was outside noise. And it was a summer afternoon. The windows in the room were open. It was a busy street that the precinct was on. And that's, as I was preparing the case, it meant nothing to me. I didn't even think of it. The defense attorney, when it was played, made a big deal of asking the cop and asking the assistant DA who took the confession about where were the defendant's children in the precinct. And it so happened his wife was notified that he was under arrest, and she brought her kid in. They were way outside the room with the door closed. But his point was, he was trying to sell the jury on the idea that his client confessed because he heard and believed that his kid was being harmed and treated poorly by the detectives and hurt. And that's what the screaming was. Tom, it had nothing could be further from the truth. It was, as I said before, a summer day. There were kids out on the street. They were playing. It was just normal street noise. In Brooklyn, that's something that you hear all the time. But here's a confession that otherwise was perfect. Yet this little bit that nobody else recognized except the defense attorney, because he knew that he was looking for anything. He had to find anything to try to get his client out from under this horrible confession, and that's what he used. So here it is, an interrogation at first blush is perfect. Perfect. That little bit of noise threatened. If you had the wrong person on the jury, that little bit of noise could have threatened the outcome of the case if they felt that the cops, were doing something to this guy's kid to get him, to force him to give a statement. And so there are lots of little things that you have to worry about when you're taking these confessions and doing these interrogations that may not necessarily be apparent to you when you're doing them, but you learn. And from that point on, I would never do another interrogation or confession like this in a room that had a window open. I didn't do it. I learned,
Yeah.
I just, I said, we'll go to an interior room where there are no windows.
Probably want a room like this, right?
Well, but the police don't have rooms like that.
Sure. I get it.
And it was an eye-opening experience. I had never, that was something and it was a very important case. It was a case that I wanted because this young woman was killed in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I knew the street that she was killed on. And it was a very important case to me. And it took a year from the time of her death to come up with the defendants. And here we were, and I was flabbergasted when this guy did this. I had to, find a way I had to call the cop back to the stand and ask him about, what was going on. And I could have made more of it than I did, but I felt that if I did too much, that a jury may say, well, why is he, defending this so much? Maybe there's something to it. I just kind of had the detective say no, and that was it. And then I argued in summation that it was preposterous for him to believe that, or for anybody to believe that they would torture this guy's kid to get a statement. So
What?
so interrogations are good, but they can backfire on you.
Sure. Are there like you good for like another like 10, 15 minutes?
Hmm.
What are like
Yes.
the pharmacological implications of interrogation? So there's like, you can't have the guys in the room, you can't have them surrounded by a bunch of good old boys, a bunch of 6'2" guys, right, with the batons and
Right.
billy clubs. You can't torture the kid. You can't X, Y, and Z. What are pharmacological implications? Let's say Vargas gets arrested and let's say he's pissed drunk. We know Vargas was a junkie.
Right.
Can you go in there and like a BAC or blow something? Can you say, I was drunk, man. I wasn't thinking right. It could that almost be an extension of insanity in that you weren't in your right mind?
Oh, sure, sure. That's why. Excuse me.
You're
That's
good.
why if you're doing this, and when I say you, I'm talking about the detectives, the prosecutors. The one thing that has to be certain, you have to be certain about, is that he is a or she is not under the influence of drugs, alcohol, or is capable of understanding what is going on. So you're not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but you have a pretty good idea if someone is trying to pull the wool over your eyes or is really nuts. Because what could happen is you go forward, if you're uncertain, you get a good confession or a good statement, and then later on it comes back to bite you in the ass because you didn't really pay attention to perhaps his alcohol level was high, or there was, under the influence, or the person was, psychologically unfit to take a confession or give a confession. So you have to be careful of that.
Now, are there like safeguards against that? Because let's say I'm a sleazeball and I'm trying to get out of it. Do I say it's almost like the inverse? Be like, they didn't give me a breathalyzer before we went in there, but I was, and maybe this is 2 weeks later, but I was really drunk that day and I wasn't thinking right. And then there's no way that they could. I'm just putting my mind in the mind of a
Okay, well,
squirmy sleazeball.
that's very possible, but here's what the great equalizer is. You're on videotape.
Maybe I can
The
hold my liquor.
confession is on videotape. So you better be a great actor on that videotape, because if you don't think of this defense while you're confessing and someone tells you later on that, well, just say you were drunk, you didn't understand it, well, that videotape is not going to support your defense. So that's one of the ways of doing it, and that's one of the reasons. If that and I mean, there are many reasons to do it on videotape, but that is one of the reasons. I'll give you another example. Someone says the cops beat this out of me, right? Well, you can't say that if the cops and the technician who's working with the DA's office, the cameraman, the cops have the guy take his clothes off and take pictures of him in the front, the back, the side, his face, close up, with absolutely no bruises. Well, then the argument is gone, and we've done that. Cops, smart detectives, who can size up a guy in terms of what his defense may be, will do exactly that. And I've had that, and there was a couple of cases where that happened, and I'll tell you, the pictures and the video was invaluable, and one guy did it, and he tried to sell it to a jury, even though the videotape was up close, because it's not the kind of thing where it's like, you and I, only the defendant is on the videotape. It's not like the prosecutor is on or the cops are on. It's only, so you're right on the guy's face. And if he says that, he was getting beaten or someone was giving him information, and he doesn't look away at the cop or doesn't look up or doesn't look, to the side, well, that's a hard sell. What, who is he? who was he getting the information from if he wasn't turning his head or looking in a certain direction other than at the camera? So,
Yeah.
you learn, this is part of the things that you learn, that you have to cut off as many of these possible defenses
Escape
as you can.
routes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to, it's an orchestration.
Yeah.
And I don't mean an orchestration in the sense that it's staged. It's an
Yeah.
orchestration in terms of making sure that things are properly done. So,
No, I get you. I get you on that. And I guess it also kind of comes down to like the scope of the investigation, right? I mean, if this is
yeah.
some jackass in Brooklyn who's, arguing over a bottle of beer versus is this, I don't know, like the CEO of Enron, or is this like a former Secretary of Defense? Like there's probably different, I would imagine you'd have a team of lawyers. I'm just again looking at it from my mind. I've got a team of lawyers and I'm going, I want them to look at the camera. I want them to look at the coding software, go through it. Did they edit anything out? I do a podcast. If I wanted to, I could stealthily edit something. You would go in, but then it also, you have to assume that super, like you just said, the police precinct doesn't have a room like this. I would
Yeah.
imagine at Langley, they probably do at the
Well, they
CIA.
probably do. But what
Yeah.
we used to make sure, that there was there was a clock in the
Okay.
video, in the screen,
I got you.
so that
Editing. Yeah.
you announce it is now 10 a.m. and we're beginning.
Okay.
And then at the end, you have the technician shoot right onto the clock and you announce it is now 12 noon and we are ending this interrogation. So now you turn it over to the defense attorney. He's going to play it. He'll see that it's 2 hours, or he'll see the camera. I mean, see the clock on the wall and know that that's what we did. So that's another thing that you have to remember to do. But not every interrogation is of a guy all by himself. I've done in the stuff in Crooked Brooklyn, the judges, one particular judge and a lawyer, he was stupid enough to come in and not ask for his own representation. This guy Simonovsky, and if I was representing him, I would have said, "Are you out of your mind? How could you have done that?" But he was looking to cut a deal, so he felt that he could cut the deal by himself. But of course, the saying, right? A lawyer who represents himself has an ass for a client, and he did not. He cut a deal. He did, and it was a pretty good deal. But what happened is the judge in that case wound up being so pissed off at him that he couldn't let him go without, even though I asked for probation, the judge sent him to jail for a little while. But the judge in that case had a lawyer with him. So there are interrogations where you have representation. And the lawyer, to me, the lawyer's job, once they sit down at the table and the detective or the prosecutor starts to ask questions, particularly when he ends the Miranda warnings, the next thing that the defendant should say, or the defendant's lawyer would say, "We have nothing to say," and walk out. With the Garson case in Crooked Brooklyn, that's not what happened. The defense attorney said, after I gave the Miranda warnings to him, said, "Well, let me talk to him." I came out, and I went out of the room, came back in. The defense attorney said, he says you have nothing. So he says you have nothing. I said, "Okay, here's what we do." I wheeled in a TV set. We had at that time a VCR. We had this on tape. And I played a piece of what he was doing in his chambers, which showed that he was committing this crime.
Mm-hmm.
Only a little bit. I gave him just enough to, kind of whet his appetite. I went outside. 5 minutes later, the defense attorney came back and said to me, he wants to give up this guy, that guy, all kinds of people because he's looking to save his ass. So that's a different kind of an interrogation. There's one with a lawyer there who sized it up and was protecting his client and trying to get us to, give this guy a deal in return for talking or giving us information about what had happened.
Yeah.
I don't know, I've had that happen, and I've been on the defense attorney end of that, where you try to get, a deal for your client right at the time when they're questioning him. But most of the time, these guys aren't smart enough. At least, you said it before. The guys who have been arrested a million times always know lawyer. I need a lawyer. But a guy like Tommy, who gets stopped and is brought into a station house, he doesn't have anything other than I want to get out of here and I want to be a nice guy and I want to tell the cops what they want to know because I think they're going to let me go. And they sink themselves. They don't ask for a lawyer. Meanwhile, the first thing you need to say is as soon as they give you Miranda is I need a lawyer.
I need an attorney. Yeah.
Correct.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I get that. It's one thing I like about Zoom is I used to jokingly say to people when we'd start recording, I'd be like, "Hey, are you okay if we start recording?" I say it to everyone, "Hey, are you okay if we start recording?" I used to just kind of say it as a joke, just because I was like, I don't want anyone to fuck me for recording without there. But now Zoom says it. But another thing about Zoom is I don't always upload that copy because it's not the highest resolution, but I do keep the Zoom file for every episode I do
Right.
because you open it up and what does it say? Bottom right hand corner, day, month, year, hour, minute, second.
Exactly.
And it has the whole thing. And I keep an unedited version of that because I've never had anyone do it. This is episode 507, but I'm just guarding my ass because I'm like, I don't know what guest I'm going to have on. And, God willing, this podcast gets bigger and I make some money. I don't know if someone's going to come on here and be like, Tommy showed me his dick. He demanded, it's a weird thing. Now,
those are the things that the prosecutor and cops have to worry about with defendants. They could say anything. You're saying that Tom showed me his dick.
Yeah.
Well, the defendant is the cops beat me up.
Yeah.
The cops told me that they were going to give me they were going to let me out, or they were going to let me go visit my girlfriend before I went into jail, that kind of thing. Well, that's why we had everything on tape so that he can't get away with saying that. And when they try to say that it happened before, well, there's nothing you can do to prevent somebody from saying that, except that you have to use what is on the tape and say to a jury, and I've done this, I said, do you think that if that happened before, here's a guy sitting across the desk from a lawyer who says that he can say anything he wants, and he didn't tell him? He had his opportunity, his chance to tell this lawyer that the cops beat the hell out of him and he didn't do it. And now he wants you to believe that happened and he said nothing about it. And did you see any evidence of it? No. So the videotape is most important, and you're doing the right thing by making sure that you keep the evidence, because you can't, it's a mean world there, Tom,
Yeah.
So
and it's getting,
anything can happen.
And it gets weirder and weirder. It's I got banned so many times for uploading videos just simply discussing COVID. And then finally, like 2 weeks ago, I had on Dr. Robert Malone, the inventor of the mRNA vaccine, the guy. And I had him come on and talk for 2 hours. And that episode didn't get taken down. And so I was like, oh, maybe something's changing within YouTube. I know there's a class action lawsuit against them for something about violating Section 230. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. So like 2 days later, I had on Dr. Mobeen Saeed, who's got a channel with like 300,000 people on YouTube. He's an Indian doctor out in California, and he gives like online lectures, and he's just freakishly brilliant and gives lectures every day about new like variants of coronavirus and like their molecular structure, and way above my head. I had him on, and that one didn't get taken down. And I was like, I think there's like a change. Something's happening. So I went back, and I mean, as you know, or anyone knows that watches this, once I got up to 2 strikes on YouTube back in like April, and if I get one more strike, I'm permanently done. I just started uploading like 30-second clips of episodes, and I'd be like, go watch the full thing somewhere else, because I was like, I don't know what straw is gonna break the camel's back. Say all of that to say, well, after those 2 episodes got up, I was like, oh, something's changing. So I went back and I took all the episodes that I had never fully uploaded, and I started uploading them all. And I was like, oh, we're in the clear now. And then last night at like 2 a.m., I got the ban hammer, and it was like, you've been uploading you uploaded a video that directly contradicted the World Health Organization, and thus you are spreading medical misinformation, and that somehow equates to hate speech. The point is I don't even know what the playing field is anymore. It's not
Yeah,
a
I know.
football
I know.
field with a rectangle. The out of bounds line is changing. Some quarters are,
Shifting.
yeah. Every quarter isn't 15 minutes anymore.
Look, the goal.
Sometimes, yeah, you get 6 downs instead of 4 downs, and it's
Exactly.
like,
Exactly.
so to me, I'm like, I'm just gonna record. I'm take a page of the NSA. I'm just gonna record everything, dragnet surveillance, and I keep my copies. I've got offsite copies. I've got offsite copies that no one knows about because I don't even know what's going on anymore, and
Yeah.
I have no idea how they're gonna try to screw me.
No, that's very smart. It's very smart. I always felt that when I was questioning someone, my protection was the fact that we were doing it on videotape.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was it. And you know, it got to the point where you know there was a time when we used to say to the cops, "Why don't you guys videotape when you guys get confessions?" And they would write, the detective would write it down, and for whatever reason I have, I think, an answer to that, but I'm not gonna, I'm gonna keep it to myself. But they didn't do it. You know, they didn't do it. So
Sure.
but that would be a way for the defense. That would be a good, I guess, weapon against that charge that the cops did something before the prosecutor got to the station house. You know, that's that was always the, you know, the Achilles heel of those videotapes is what this guy was going to say about what happened before, you know, before I got there. But I can tell you one other thing
Yeah.
with this, with that case I told you about, with the cop being dead, where he shot the guy who would try to steal his motorcycle. I was so, I took a chance that probably I shouldn't have taken, but I took it. And I said to the defendant at the end of the tape, before I shut the tape off, were you treated well by the police? Yes. Did they promise you anything? No. Did they threaten you in any way? No. Did they give you food? Yes. Did they give you whatever you want to drink? Yes. Did they let you use the bathroom? Yes. And when I got back to the office and I showed some of my colleagues the videotape, they said, "What, are you crazy? Would you do that? What if he would have said no?" It was a calculated, you know, gamble. I had such a good feeling about how things were going, you know, that I did it. I did it. And it was, he didn't, his defense was not that he was beaten into the confession. His defense was basically nothing. Some other dude did it, you know, and he almost got away with it. But you know, we tried it again, and he got convicted. But you know, so you take a chance, and I have a feeling that the department or the cops don't want to take that chance as far as going on with it, because at that point these guys are agitated, these defendants, and who knows what they would say. You know, they could blow it totally out of proportion, and then you're really sunk. So
Yeah.
I took the chance, and it worked for me. But you know, I could understand that for others it wouldn't. But I said, you know, I sized up the situation and knew what I was dealing with before I did that. So
Do you,
um,
do you think we're gonna see a? Do you think we're gonna? And this is kind of all now wild speculation. From this moment forward, Mister Vecchione and myself are not doctors. Do you think we're gonna see? Is there gonna be some weird precedents or legal cases of people knocking on doors with vaccines? And it's for everyone listening. I've said this before. This is nothing about being anti-vax. When I wasn't allowed to talk about the election, that's all I talked about until they stopped caring. That's just me being an arrogant asshole, right? You know, as soon as you tell me, Tom, you know, keep your mouth shut, what do I do for 20 minutes? I try to like argue. That's why I'm sure that's why I gave my parents gray hairs. So for me, I'm always trying to play the devil's advocate. Do you think we're going to see there's got to be some sort of legal clashes coming of like because one of like the talking points on like the memos for people knocking on doors is ignore no soliciting signs, and you're seeing people say it's going to get weird in states like Texas or Florida, when there's like, what is it, like castle rules or castle doctrine, where you can defend your property with lethal force. It The tension is already thick enough in this country that, I mean, it's like a match. You could drop one in the forest and it's going to go up. Do you think some weird things are going to come with it? And let me preface that by saying I know that's a hot button issue, and you don't have to answer that if you don't want
No,
to.
I have an answer because I'm not.
Sure.
I don't know, but I think that it's it's a very simple situation. Somebody knocks on your door, you don't want to be bothered. You just don't answer the door.
And that's
Um,
pretty much my logic.
that's pretty much that's it. That's it. You don't have to answer the door, and it's not that even if you did answer the door, it's not like someone's going to stick a
Jab, yeah. Yeah.
So
I understand that.
it's
Yeah.
a very simple situation. So but that doesn't account for the people who are so upset and hot in this country over many different issues to take it out on these people who are simply trying to you know
Yes.
educate you about it. So
Yes.
that's why I say I don't know, but it's certainly possible. But it's a simple solution.
Yeah.
Don't answer the door.
Yeah. I always try to stay aware of myself and my biases, and, try not to pearl clutch. It's like, dude, these are like moms and dads who are just, fuck it. Yeah, sure. Let's walk around and canvas and knock on. I get it. I don't want it. And it's cool. If someone knocked on my door, I wouldn't answer the door. And if I did answer the door, I'd just say, oh, no, thank you.
No,
No,
thank you.
it's not that. So I try to stay aware and not pearl clutch. It's not some FBI HRT team. They're not banging down your door with
Of
a gun
course.
made out of
No,
syringes. I get that.
no.
But my point is, so I can stay calm. You're clearly a calm, collected, wise individual. There are people who they're looking for,
We're
they're,
different.
they're, yeah,
Yes.
they're the people that wake up, right? I post something online and I see comments on my videos of, you're a moron. I have a very simple doctrine that's just called don't engage. I don't engage anyone. All I do is
Exactly.
I leave the little heart on every comment. That's all I do. That's my interaction.
It kind of goes back to what I said to you before about the traffic stop.
Keep your mouth shut.
Just be polite.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't give any information. Just be polite.
But they're gonna. It's like those people that like erect statues of like Satan and Baphomet in like downtown like Seattle, just to test their First Amendment rights. And hey, I'm all for it. That's not my cup of tea. Satan's not my cup of tea. But for people that do want to erect a statue of a goat holding a child and whatever, hey, that's your First
Knock
Amendment.
yourself out.
That's your
Yeah.
First Amendment. But there are those people that it's like, as much as like a white conservative male, even though I'm like, yeah, no, you can do that. The vast majority of people kind of just beneath the skin are like, but I mean, why do you really got to push the buttons? Like,
Yeah.
technically
Right.
I could walk around with a 357 on my hip for everyone to see. Like, that is legal. You got to be that guy. There are people who do want to get up right in front of your face, an inch away. I'm legally not touching you. And real quick question again, and then I'll let you go. I'm holding you hostage. Did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself? Do you think so? I mean, and I can edit this out if you don't want the CIA killing you.
Do I think so? Once again, how would I have? I
don't.
know.
Wild speculation. I'm just asking you.
I think it's very possible that he could have, and I think it's very possible he could have been murdered. I don't. I really don't know.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, even more importantly, Tom, I don't care.
Yeah, me neither. I don't give a fuck.
I could give a flying fuck about Jeffrey Epstein and what happened to him.
Yeah, he was killed by the CIA, and it's like, well, listen, man, this is how I kind of look at it. Either he was a pedophile running a human trafficking ring of kids as a way to blackmail and compromise world diplomats, in which case, fuck him. And if that wasn't true, then he's just a pedophile, in which case I don't care if he was killed or if he killed himself.
Well, both of them could be true.
Or it's either he's a pedophile that just killed himself, in which case I don't give a fuck, or he was running a blackmail human trafficking ring for world diplomats in order for the U.S. to exert our power in different countries, and then the CIA killed him, in which case this is so far over my pay grade, I don't want anything to do with it.
Exactly. It's useless to spend any time thinking about it,
Oh,
quite frankly.
it's fun though. It's
Yeah.
if you do a podcast, it's fun. I
Well,
reached.
for you got to have topics. I
Yeah,
understand that. I
yeah, yeah,
understand
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. It's
But for me, it's very easy to say what I said. I don't know,
yeah. I
and I
don't
don't
know, and,
care.
I don't give a shit. Yeah, it's.
Exactly. Exactly.
I had on Will Arkin yesterday, a best-selling author, and I think he was Army intelligence. I've had him on 3 times now, and I ask him at the end. I always ask him, I'm like, "What do you think about like UFO sightings?" And he goes, "I think it's the United States technology." He goes, "I really do." And he goes, "It might be flying saucers from a different world." He goes, "But Tommy, I'll be honest, frankly, I don't give a shit. Like
Exactly.
gas prices are up, and I'm hungry, and I got to go pick my daughter up. I don't. I got a lot going on, and that's kind of my logic. But this one's kind of ventured off into the weeds. Mr. Vecchione, author of Behind the Murder Curtain, Murder on the Bridge. No, Killer. No,
Yeah.
Burn on the Bridge. Hand to the Killer. Crooked Brooklyn and Friends of
Friends
the
of the
Family.
family.
Got them all. I'll put those in the description. And yeah, man. Until
And
next time.
soon, homicide is my business.
I was gonna say you need to turn it into alliteration. You gotta be like homicide is my hobby.
It's a direct quote from the bad
Okay.
guy. That's
Damn
where
it.
it came from.
All right. Well,
He said it to
me.
He said it to at a congressional hearing. He testified at Ronald Reagan's commission on organized crime, and he was one of the witnesses. And that's where that came from.
I've had on a guy twice now whose dad was a mob hitman back in the 60s and 70s in New Orleans. And his mom, who met his dad through the clubs, his mom was a woman of the night for none other than Jack Ruby.
Okay. Very good.
Getting a little hairy, but
yeah, that's pretty cool.
I've kept you for 20 minutes longer than I said I would, so I apologize for that. But
I look forward to the next time. Give me a call anytime.
Fuck yeah, man. I'll shoot you a text. We'll schedule the next one. And as always, man, thank you for coming on. You're a fascinating individual. And I appreciate your time, man. I appreciate your patience with my stupid questions.
That's okay. No problems. Nothing, no questions too stupid. So don't worry about it.
Hell yeah. Appreciate it, Mike. Take care. God bless America. Stay safe, everybody.
Let me know when you finish. Let me know when we're off. I want to tell you something.
Oh, yeah, sure. Hold on. Let me stop recording.